Why is forgiveness a good thing? What's the benefit of forgiveness? If you understand providence, it's your future. It's your ideal future that you could be. If you're stuck in a competitive loop with someone, you're stuck in their paradigm. Have you ever heard someone say, that person is living rent-free in that person's head? Carl Benjamin is living rent-free in Jess Phillips's head. In a way, she's probably living rent-free in his head as well. But the point is, when you're both locked in that mimetic loop, you're not living your own life. You're not living your future ideal. You're just competing. It's the spirit of competitiveness that you want to escape. Not so you don't aspire and do your great future and bring about your great future, but so you're not locked in a dead derivative way of being that is already inside, not from outside. And what you're trying to do is locate outside, is become outside. What we're trying to escape is the mimetic spiral, where you spiral inward and you end up just, instead of doing something new, you imitate each other. And you can see this with Elon Musk, and you can see this with Jeff Bezos, copying everything that he does. Copying everything that he does with the space shuttle stuff. That's what we're trying to escape. The eye for an eye. The eternal return of the same is what it is karma. This karmic loop of eternal return and vengeance, of guilt and resentment, that has been a stewing pot since before Christ redeemed us. And so that's what Christ redeems. That's what forgiveness gives you. You escape that. How? Let's look at that movie Viking. In Viking, it's taken back, and this is low paganism, not high paganism. What happens in that movie is he goes on his father's killed by someone, and he spends the whole movie going to avenge his father. At the end of the movie, he's offered a chance to jump off a ship is going away from the land with this woman that he's found, right? I think she's pregnant from memory. He can either go with her to the new world, or he can go back and fulfill his vengeance. And he chooses eye for an eye. He jumps off the ship and leaves his providential ideal. And so at that stark choice at the end of that Viking movie, we understand what forgiveness is. It's being released from that so you can live this future. And what happens to him? How long do you think that child's going to live in the belly of that woman? His line ends. That's the ideal God wants for you, to bear fruit in the world. That's over because he goes back to seek vengeance. You're denying the good news. The good news, even if you take Christ out of the picture, which you can't, but take Christ out of the picture, the good news is the outside. It's the new that's brought inside. It's the ideal. You're not stuck in this vengeance loop. You want to go back to the vengeance loop? Then you're just a product of your past. Without the miraculous, without the ingression from outside, without sacred magic, you're just a product of the proddings of the eternal return. You're not making any real choices. Free will only exists outside the deterministic subject of heredity and the collective will that runs round and round in the vengeance loop. With the miraculous, as an ingression, you're nested in that outside and granted life from that outside. That's why. And so when we say forgiveness, we're making the choice to, at the end of that Viking movie, to go with the woman to the new world, to raise a family and continue our genetic line, not have the tree cut off, which means, again, it's the choice between the serpent. The serpent is the low magical agent. It's Ahriman. It's the will to power. So the people that would choose to go back for vengeance, they worship the will to power. And in the end, it destroys them. You're just a product of the person you're taking a vengeance against. When wouldn't your dead father want, if I suppose you could take vengeance or get justice and still live a providential life as well. But the point is, it's articulating an archetype, and it's to let it go. And so that's why. And so forgiveness is not this cucky thing where you just give people good things. No, that's not how it works. It's about releasing you from the empirical subject, which you are born into, and your low desires. It's about releasing you from that so you can manifest and becoming, which is not the empirical self as Nietzsche thought. It's outside. It's the transcendent self, as Jung discovers, as Steiner identifies with, as Tomberg continues the work of. And that's where we come to the high paganism, not the low paganism of the Germanics. Hermeticism is high paganism. They're the rituals of death where you identify with the transcendent self, but still recognizing there's a God outside the transcendent self, of course, that you're not God. It's not what the yogis think where the transcendent self is God. That's a mistake. There's also a lot of issues with the technicalization of that, but that's a subject for a different time. So what are these practices? Throughout the day, the first practice is asking for forgiveness from sins. You'll find that things will recur. Often things of embarrassment will come up and you won't know what it is, right? So a thought of embarrassment will occur again and again, of some experience or some shame, right? That's the key emotion. Anything that's generated shame, they'll appear again and again. So this practice you do every day. And of course, you can do this in front of an Orthodox priest because you're not confessing to him, you're confessing to the Lord, and he's just there to witness it. So throughout the day, though, it's really important as soon as these thoughts arise to address it then. So every time a shameful thought, we've all done embarrassing or shameful, anything like that occurs. You might not know the sin that's related to it. It's important that you figure it out. So as soon as it comes, think about what's the sin that's related to this. And there always is a sin behind it in some way. And as soon as you work that out, put your hand on your heart and mean it and ask the Lord to forgive you for that every time that happens. And you're released of it. The Lord, and this is done in collaboration. You can't just do it as a technique. You have to mean it. It has to be true. But he releases you from all those things. They don't pop up again. Mainly, that's releasing you from these. What those things really are lost sheep. Those things that you did, particularly savage sins, before you realized they were sins or they mattered. If you were, like I was, an atheist, there's just things you did in modernism that are accepted but are actually really sinful. And so when you acknowledge that, you're released from that. But really what those things are demons. They're all lost sheep. Think about it like that. You're leading. You never should be harsh on yourself. You should treat yourself and your past and everything like that like a lost sheep that you're leading back to the Lord. Come on now, we're going back to the Lord. It's not we're not flagellating ourselves. We've learned that lesson that's a mistake. But then here's the really hard one. It's forgiving, loving your enemies. You go, well, how do I do that? That seems cucky or whatever. Firstly, it's willing good towards your enemies. Like the Jays, let's think about. People get a lot of resentment because of what the Jays have done, what they're doing right now and in the past. Whatever your enemies, people can have, like, the R word has happened to some people, right? But the Lord will heal you of all these resentments so you can leave. So you're not, so the resentments and the people that did them are not living rent-free in your head. That's what you want to avoid. Say you don't like the Jays. You want to be removed from the loop of that so you can follow your providential self, which might be removing political problems or whatnot still, but it's not up to you, the empirical subject. Because your empirical subject is infected by demons of resentment. That means that he is not connected with truths. So sanction might be given by the transcendent self to punish the Jays or do whatever it might be. But it's not up to you. So it's never cucky. It's simply about your flawed empirical self and identifying with divine will. That's why you go through this forgiveness. That's why you love your enemies, because you're not to be trusted as the empirical subject. Your transcendent self is trustworthy because he's outside, because he's part of the divine, because Christ speaks through him to you. He's your guardian angel. In the metaphysics, if you understand what providence is, and it's absolutely clear when you recognize that divination is legitimate, by loving them, by forgiving them, what you're doing is willing good towards them. What you're doing is asking Christ to bless them. That's what you do. So when the resentment comes up, or a will to power, competitiveness with some person you want to defeat, and that will to grasp and the will to advance at the expense of other people and to conquer the person that wronged you, again, you want them to stop living rent-free in your head. That's why you're doing this. You're just willing that the demon that they are is burnt off by Christ and they turn to Christ when you bless them. That's what you're willing. You're not willing them to have any of their dark desires fulfilled, to have any luck or to survive. No, you don't want any of that. Everyone has the image of God in them. So you're willing good, by loving them, asking the Lord to bless them and asking the Lord to burn off the demons that did the action, and for them praying that they turn towards the Lord, is asking that person to be burnt off. That's all you're asking. So you can do that. You can will good towards them in that way, and you will be released from the resentment of it. And the Lord will heal this from you by doing this. Anyway, by doing this, you don't live a life as a provoked being, as a polemical derivative energy. You begin to identify with and move towards Zoe, the virginal, free nature, free energy from outside, spiritual energy. It also opens spiritual doors. By doing this over time, by removing yourself from this, it's not checking out from the world at all. Being the good is removed from the desires of the empirical subject as you're raised. It's not checking out from the world, it's saving the world. It's ingressing into the system through you, and you're the mediator of it because you work in collaboration with the Lord to bring these things about. It's bringing heaven to earth. It's checking out of the low desires that you're born with. You got to recognize that the thoughts that pop up for you, do this, do that. I hate that person. I hate this person. It's not you. You're made up of different entities. It's very rarely the transcendent self that actually communicates to you. You are trying to establish a relationship with this outside. Nietzsche was so close to this when he talks about the self. It's beyond that, though. It's beyond the empirical self, because that's the will to power. It's outside. And that's what you're trying to do, to break out of that paradigm so you can ingress your true destiny into the world and bring about a kind of spiritual progress, not progressiveness though, but a spiritual progress in terms of to be like the Eldar in Warhammer 40k, to bring beauty into the world, to improve the creation through collaboration. And the last practice is just people you walk past, just bless them. Ask the Lord to bless them. You know, you might just go, fatty, or look at that old CUNT, or whatever it is. Ask the Lord to bless them, help them in their way. And it's all these things do stuff, and it helps. And it releases you from the attitude of this yappy devil in your mind. And again, none of that stops sanction. None of that is to say that, you know, immigrants don't need deportation and all this different stuff, because that's what the Lord wants too. But you're not to decide as the empirical subject. You have to decide in collaboration with the Lord. You're not to be trusted because you want it for low reasons, because you're limited. You're finite. You've only got the knowledge of a dude with, mostly a dude with 40 years of experience on this earth. What do you know? So you need to seek divine help and sanction for these decisions that need to happen. The Lord is patriarchal love. Patriarchal love is not soft. It's a smack sometimes. It's judgment. But you're not capable. Human judgment was proven to be false when we collectively crucified Christ. Human judgment is fallible if you turn towards him. He's not, though. His love is a fire if you're evil and needs to be burnt off. Anyway, like if you're going to persecute his people and go after and attack his people, his sheep, then he's going to sanction that you be conquered. So it's not soft at all. But yeah, bless people as you walk past them. Release yourself from the mimetic loop of your weak, low, empirical subject biases that have crept up from your sin. And you will be granted the abilities of the transcendent self. Granted faculties, the spiritual world opens to you when you go through this process. Among other things, with concentration without effort as well. The spiritual world opens to you through this, by doing this. So there are enormous benefits. You don't do it for that reason. You do it because it's the good and it's the right, and because you want to let it be according to his word with you. Let it be according to his word and will. That's what you want. God bless you. Forgive and be forgiven. Bless and be forgiven. Let go of your resentments. Let go of your shame. Leave the mimetic coil. Leave the mimetic loop of the low empirical subject and the will to power, and manifest and become the transcendent self, which is what the Lord wants for you, to be fruitful. Don't be the foolish Viking that jumps off the ship. Be the sanctified, baptized, future Viking who stays on the ship with his wife and continues his genetic line. Do you want to be eliminated by going back to the will to power? Because that's what's going to happen. Your whole people and ethnic group is going to be crushed and destroyed through resentment and through turning away from God. Or do you want it to prosper and be led by revelation and providence, as Nick Land understands?